how to mine them and how to make them into figurines was there during Indus Valley civilization, a very sophisticated one. Okay, let me now sing a verse for you. Vaturva gehiva yatirapi jativa taritaro narovaya kaschit bhavatu bhavakim tena bhavati yadiyam hritpadmam yadi bhavadadhinam Pashupate Tadiyastvam Shambho Bhavasi Bhava Bharam Chavahasi. This is a beautiful verse, a verse from a composition called Shivananda Lahari in Sanskrit, an ode to Lord Shiva by Adi Shankara. Some scholars opine it could be written by a person after him. Most say it could be written by Adi Shankara himself, but the verse and its purport and its inner meaning is what is going to guide us now. So Adi Shankara says, whether you're a celibate seeker of truth or you're a man of the family, whether you're the one with the shaven head or the one who seeks the truth, or whether you're the one with the matted hair locks, so jata, juta, so you've got jata, or whether you're a grihastha who's living with Parvati, who's your consort, or whether you live as a vanaprastha in the vanam, which is a forest, or none of these or all of these. But I call you, Shankara tells, yadiyam hrit padmam yadi bavad adhinam Pashupate. Hey Pashupati. Pashupate, pati. Pati in Sanskrit doesn't literally mean the husband. It could mean the one who's the Lord. So Pashupate, Pashupati, the one who is the Lord of all beings. You are the one who stays in my lotus heart, my heart, which has a lotus in it. This is what Sanatana Dharma Hinduism believes, that there is a very, very minuscule lotus in the inverted form. It's called Hridaya Kamalam. So he says, Hrit Padmam, Hrit Padmam. Padma is lotus. Hrit Padmam has to do with the lotus in the heart. Maybe you recite there, Hey Shambho, Tadiyastvam Shambho, Bhavasi Bhavabharam Chavahasi. Take away this burden of my life. So this was a very common line to most acharyas and composers those days. So while I'm discussing Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, and then I spoke about Mehergarh in Baluchistan, then came to Indus Valley, suddenly I've taken you to this verse. Now, I'm going to show you an artifact, a find from the Indus Valley site, and that's very important to understand where Hinduism and Sanatana Dharma is rooted even in the Indus Valley civilization. So around the 1928 or 29 CE, a seal was taken. It was discovered exactly 12 feet below the ground, and it was taken out, and it is believed to be made of soapstone. So I'm just going to show you that particular seal. What you see on your screen is a seal. Let's zoom in. When I'm going to zoom in, you see the beautiful face of someone. Who could this be? So there are many, many interpretations, and the seal doesn't just carry this person. It has a lot of animals and a lot of representations above, on the sides, and beneath. So let's assume this person is seated on a simhasanam, a throne. So because we see two legs, the other two will be behind. We can't see them. It's just a projection. So we have a simhasanam, a throne. This person is seated with legs folded. Let's deal with the legs slightly later. Now we see his hands are touching his thighs, extended till his thighs, and just look at the face. So when I zoom in into the face, I find two other faces on the sides. There is one on the left, there is one on the right. So it is now very clear through many, many sculptures which came in the later dynasties and during the later centuries that Lord Shiva is represented with 3 or 5 heads. So when it's 3 heads, it could be Shiva. What supports the interpretation that it could be Shiva? So when we look at Shiva in all our Puranas, his Vahanam, his vehicle is a Nandi, the bull with the 2 horns. Now just look at his head. It carries a crown which has 2 horns, which could be depictive of his Vahanam. So you don't have to depict a bull there. his Vahanam is depicted with his crown. And on the other way, if you look at his crown, doesn't it look like the front or the upper part of a Trishulam, which is his weapon? So you have the central piece, you've got two bends on either sides, it looks like a Trishulam. And he sits in a yogic posture. It's not exactly folded legs. If you see, his feet are touching each other. So the left foot is touching the right foot. So which is called as Moola Bandhasana, which is one of the asanas recommended in Yoga Shastra. And you find many, many animals around him. So you've got Shiva, you've got many Pashus. Pashu in Sanskrit literally means animals. So he is the Pati, the leader or the lord of all these animals which are Pashus. So this could be the seal of Pashupati. So I did speak about Mehergarh on one side of the Indus River, where we had figurines, the female figurines, which could be Devi worship. Here we have Shiva's worship, and there is another subdivision to this interpretation. Now, when we look at Shiva, it could also denote the phallus. A phallus is a representation of the penis of the male. So the male reproductive organ. So the penis is called the phallus when it's represented, and Shiva could be represented this way, is one interpretation. Do we have any evidence that supports that? Yes. I will take you to a temple, a lesser known temple, which is called Gudimellam in Chittoor district of Andhra Pradesh. What you see in your screen is that temple. And you see, this temple is called Parashurameshwara temple. I'm not getting into the legend, the Sthala Puranam of the temple. What you see is the temple. And inside the temple, in the Sanctum Sanctorum, this is what you see. So if you look at it, it looks like a lingam. If you get closer, it is the head of an erect penis, and you have a figure which has been embossed or sculpted into the phallus, and that is Lord Shiva. And some date the lingam between the 3rd and the 1st century BCE, while some state it could be the 7th century CE. So there is a difference of, say, roughly 1,000 years. But when you look at it, you find Shiva being represented as a vigorous hunter. There is no Yajnopavitam, the sacred thread worn after the Upanayanam. There is no sacred thread. When I zoom closer, I find a lot of ornamentation in his hands. Don't you find that very similar to the bronze statue of the dancing girl in the Indus Valley? Now let's go closer. He is naked. There is a thin rope that's tying something that's been tied below his abdomen. They are extended legs seated on probably a Nandi or a Bhringi or a Gana himself. Some state it could be a demon whom he has vanquished. You should see his right hand. It either holds a ram or an antelope. I'm not sure. If you look at the left hand, it holds a parashu slightly behind and a bow. So Sri Rudram, which celebrates Lord Shiva, begins like this: Yata Yishu Shivatama Shivam Babhuva Te Dhanuhu. So it calls him as the one who holds the dhanus, which is the bow. So this is what you see. And he's got heavy earrings, and he's got bracelets, and he's got a necklace, and he's got a girdle. That's what I spoke, that which is below the abdomen, and there is no Yajnopavitam. So this is how we represent Shiva in a phallus. So if you go back to the seal, some say that this is Pashupati because it looks like a phallus too, to some. Now, is there a cross-cultural reference? Yes. On the other side of India, now we have been discussing the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. Let's go to slightly to the northeast, where we have this little Himalayan kingdom called Bhutan. And you have a fertility temple of Chimi Lakhang in the Punakha district. I have taken people on a yatra to this country, and I was amazed at the beauty of this country. It's a must-visit country, so beautiful, so pristine. You come across this temple in the Punakha district of Bhutan. It's called Chimi Lahang, and it is this temple is called is said to have been built for and by the madman. He was called the madman. In the Bhutanese, they call him Drukpa Kunle. And he had very unorthodox ways of teaching. And one of his ways was to use the wooden phalluses, the erect penises made of wood, to fly. So it may seem like the Harry Potter's flying scene, but this is what it was used. So we see a cross-cultural reference to fertility being denoted by an erect penis, a phallus, and this phallus being represented in the linga. So that's what they say to support the interpretation that the seal represents Pashupati, Lord Shiva. The second interpretation, they say it need not represent a deity. It could be simply a buffalo man, just a buffalo man. So third, they say it could be Mahishasura, because we've spoken of Devi worship. Mahishasura Mardini is a beautiful depiction of Devi, which will come across in many dynasties. As I'm going to take you across various dynasties, you will see Mahishasura Mardini. So when we deal with Mahishasura Mardini, the Mahishasura is represented by this Pashupati. I should not call it Pashupati, it's a seal. And it has got two horns, so it is representative of a bull or a buffalo. So it could be a buffalo man, so Mahishasura. And what is depictive of the Devi is Durga. Durga is the one who vanquished him in a battle. She comes on a tiger, and you see a tiger in the seal as well. So tiger represents Durga, the female energy, vanquishing the Asura, the male Asura called Mahishasura. This is another one. And the animals that you see around are running in various cardinal directions, being tormented or being afraid of Mahishasura. This is the third interpretation. Now, the fourth interpretation by some historians is this could be a Vedic deity. So in Vedas, we venerate Agni, because to perform a yajnam, a homam, a havan, you need Agni. So you say Jata Veda se, Jateti Vedaha, Jata Vedaha. So you pour your benedictions on Agni. So Agni could be represented as three-headed. And if you have to represent Agni's tongue, he's called Sapta Jikwa. He's got 7 tongues. So it is three-headed, it could be Agni as well. And the fifth interpretation, some say it could be Rishi Shringa. So if you're going to deal around the 3000 and between 3300 and 2500 BCE, that is when we are going to have Ramayana coming into picture by many historians who have dated it around that period. So if there is Ramayana, Balakandam in Ramayana begins with Dasharatha performing the Putrakama Ishti and Ashwamedha Mahayajnam, to which he called his son-in-law. So his daughter Shanta was given in adoption to the king called Romapada of the neighboring kingdom. And because of the famine and the drought that struck Angadesha, Romapada sent his daughter Shanta to lure Vibhandaka's son Rishishringa. Rishishringa's place is somewhere in Karnataka, very close to Sringeri. And so he was lured and brought, and then they were married and they were settled. So there are interpretations that Rishishringa could have settled in and around Rajasthan, because Rajasthan has Mount Abu, and Mount Abu is called Bhrigu-Tunga, where the Bhrigu Maharishi settled. So if you go on to that side and then move from Rajasthan slightly closer to Indus, is where you got this Indus Valley civilization and the seal. So Rishi Shringa would have been the most sought after person. So Shringam in Sanskrit is horn. So though he could have represented a certain deer category called Rishyam with a single horn, some say he could be represented with 2 horns as well. So it could be Rishi Shringa as well. So this is the fifth interpretation. So this seal that I took of, I'm going to call it Pashupati of Lord Shiva. You can call it any way. So I've given you the various interpretations with which historians have come, and there is no a single conclusion that this could be representative of this deity alone. But many books of renowned historians state that this could be Pashupati. So our evidence, historical evidence of venerating Agni or Pashupati or even Durga comes even from the Indus Valley civilization. But there are some questions. So if you go to Egypt, I've had the opportunity to be to Egypt, and I'm amazed by that civilization which would have lived then, I could imagine what kind of a civilization it would have been. So in Egypt, you find a lot of representations of the pyramids, and you've got Sphinx, and you've got the beautiful Sun Temple in Luxor. So you've got many monuments which have lived, and you've got the ziggurats of the Mesopotamia. Whereas in the Indus Valley civilization, the IVC, we don't find many monuments. So historians are very skeptical, and but it doesn't mean that Hinduism didn't exist because there were no temples, because Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, even from time immemorial, has believed that temple is not a place of worship, but it is a place of people getting together and exhibiting their skills. So we believe that worship could happen even from home. So just because there were no temples found in Indus Valley civilization wouldn't merit that Hinduism was not there then. But it is noted by historians that many temples are not found, or no temples or monuments are found during that period. Now, why did this Indus Valley civilization, which has been of such importance and study, why did that decline? So some say attribute the reasons like political and economical overreach, or drying up or changing of courses of rivers. So Indus and its tributaries could have changed their courses suddenly, causing to the death of a lot of inhabitants, or people moving to another spot, or due to overpopulation. I spoke about the 5 million population, and probably there were new tribes looking at the prosperity with which Indus Valley civilization was thriving. Probably a lot of tribes from Central Asia or from Eurasia started moving towards the settlements of Indus Valley civilization, which could have led to a lot of wars, and then the old tribes would have been defeated. But it did not vanish completely. So we find that a lot of practices of the Indus Valley civilization, either because of migration of people to the Ganga-Yamuna system. So from Indus and its entire river systems, they could have moved to Ganga-Yamuna systems and they settled there. Their practices continued. And in the Indus Valley civilization, a large site itself, we had one settlement called Perak. And that Perak is said to have existed after the decline of Indus Valley civilization till about the invasion of Alexander in 325 BCE. So we did have one settlement which survived. Or some say that Indus could have become very dry, the river which was the source, because the river, around the river was where civilizations thrived. So they say that Indus could have gotten dry, or because of tectonic events, or general, there could have been weakening of monsoons. There are many reasons. There is no one particular hypothesis or theory that supports it. Many reasons could have led to it. But nevertheless, John Key in the History of India, the book, John Key states, this being the case, I'm just quoting him verbatim, this being the case, the total, albeit gradual eclipse of Harappan civilization is all the more mystifying. Sumerian civilization led on to that of Babylon. Egypt's old kingdom was succeeded by the Middle Kingdom. China's dynastic succession scarcely faltered. But in the Indian subcontinent, the first great experiment in urban living, in political organization, and in commercial enterprise disappeared without trace beneath the sand and the silt. So I'm going to show you a depiction of how a site of the Indus Valley civilization looks from the top. So this is a beautiful site that you see. You find equally built chambers. They've got high walls, and you've got some circles as well. So they knew of shapes, rectangles, triangles, and their understanding of measurements and shapes was exemplary. But you find them, you can call them ruins or just remains. So this is what we have of Indus Valley civilization. Now, when we speak of Indus Valley civilization, it's not a stop all or know all there. There are other things that we need to know of, discoveries which are still being found. So the first that I'm going to take you across is Arikamedu. It is near Puducherry. Puducherry is a union territory of India. It is in the state of Tamil Nadu. So Arikamedu, it finds mention as Poduke in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, the Greek account. This place is mentioned as Poduke. And Ptolemy, in the Roman Empire. That's what even he mentions of this place. And some historians and archaeologists conclude that this could have been the Greek trading post that that once traded with Rome in the 2nd century BCE to the 8th century CE. For a span of say 1,000 years, you had this as a trading post. So Arikamedu. So this is the entrance. So the entrance that you see is not the old one. It's a recent one. When I say recent, about 350 to 400 years old. But when we get into the site, we find a beautiful picture, the remains of Arikamedu. So I couldn't find proper resolution pictures of Arikamedu. Then I'm going to take you to another place in Tamil Nadu, again in the south of India, in the Erode district. So it's called Kodumanal, and it was called Kodumanam or Pattiripattu in Sangam period. So Sangam period is another period which we'll be discussing in the literature of regional languages. I'll talk about that Sangam literature in detail then. So during the Sangam period, along the banks of river Noyal is this Kodumanal, and this place played a major role in Indo-Roman trade relations. And we find arrowheads, swords, iron melting furnaces, pottery with Tamil scripts. So we found all this as evidences to support that this was between the 2nd century BCE and 2nd century CE. So again, this lasted for about 400 years, which is very strong. Kodumanal. Next, you see a beautiful picture also here. So I'm going to show you this picture in the screen as well. And these are the remains of that place. Next is Adichanallur. And it is again in the south of India, in Tamil Nadu. It is in a district called Thoothukudi, which was erstwhile called Tuticorin. And you find a number of urns with Tamil Brahmi script. So Brahmi script is separate, Tamil is separate, but this was a combination, like how we called Manipravala during the medieval period. It was called Tamil Brahmi script, dated roughly between the 1000 and the 600 BCE. So we have the 6th century CE to the 10th century CE. So it's quite very, very old. And I'll show you a picture of how this site looks. So what you're seeing in front of your eyes is a beautiful overview of how this Adichanallur site looks. Now, I'm going to move to another southern state, slightly above Tamil Nadu. It is in the state of Karnataka. So in the district, Gulbarga district, you have a place called Kanaganahalli. Kanaganahalli generally in Kannada, the South Indian language, denotes a village. Kanaganahalli is a village. Between the 1st century BCE and the 3rd century AD, we have a beautiful Buddhist stupa which was patronized by the Mahayana and the Hinayana. Again, to all my Sishyas, when I speak about comparative religion, I will be taking up Buddhism as well. I'll be discussing about the 4 branches, how they have been coupled. So you've got the Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Yogachara, Shunyavada. Now they've been brought under 2, the idealistic and the realistic path, which is called the Hinayana and Mahayana. Understand them to be the two large subsects of Buddhism. So this stupa was patronized by both the subsects, so which was Mahayana and the Hinayana, and there is a depiction of Ashoka. So in this Kanaganahalli site, I'll show you this picture. Can you see this picture? So it's a beautiful picture of Ashoka. Look at the posture with which he stands, and you have him with his female attendants. They could have not been his queens. They could have been attendants, because we don't find much of a difference between the two of them. So they could be attendants who would be attending to Ashoka. And this is a depiction of Ashoka, and some historians say it could be his queens as well. So we are not sure whether they're just female attendants or queens. Let's assume they are 2 females, could be queens or attendants. And then there is another picture that I'm going to show you on your screen. And that is again a find from this Kanaganahalli stupa, which is a Dharma Chakra. So in Pali, it was called Dhamma Chakra. So Dhamma Chakra is Dhamma Chakra in Sanskritam. So Dharma Chakra is very, very depictive. When we go further to the Gupta and the Mauryan dynasty, especially the Shungas, the Guptas, and especially the Mauryas, we'll have Buddhism playing a role. So you have this Dhamma Chakra. So this is Kanaganahalli, which is again a very old site. So Indus Valley civilization was absolutely a benchmark, but beyond the Indus Valley civilization also we have had many finds. Now the latest find, which is very celebrated, is again a settlement around the Sangam period near Madurai, a celebrated city in Tamil Nadu, which is a southern state in India. It is again during the Sangam period along the banks of river Baigai. And the archaeologists and later some historians who have read the evidences state that the finds depict that this is the ancient culture of the Tamil people. And there is another site which is found very close to Kiradi, which is called Manalur. And during the Sangam era, we find a lot of research scholars who say that it was called Perumanalur. But some say that Perumanalur is a different site. In whichever case, Perumanalur and Manalur come around the same topography, and it was spread across 80 acres. So we find this Kiradi excavation is a breakthrough. So we find kitchen wells, we have brick walls, we have roof tiles, we have pottery. Just getting one of this wouldn't suffice to call it a huge civilization or a huge settlement. We have kitchen walls, we have brick walls, we have roof tiles, we have pottery, we have Tamil Brahmi script etched on plates, we have a sewage canal facility, we have Aretine type ceramics. So these ceramics established that we could have traded with the Roman Empire even then. So this Kiradi site is dated between the 5th century BCE and the 3rd century CE. So it could have lasted for about 800 years that this settlement lived. So Kiradi. So I'll take you across some pictures. Can you see the brick wall? So this is a beautiful picture of the brick wall. Now it's one over the other. So there's a layer there. And then I'm going to take you across to some pottery, some materials or evidences of pottery that have been found in Kiradi site. And now I'm going to take you to another picture. Can you see the excavation blocks? So it's not completely excavated, the area. So we have some excavation blocks. Yeah, something that adds value to excavation is metallurgy, undoubtedly, because you need to know what is mining. You need to learn mining, you need to mine, you need to take the ore, and then you need to have the ability or technique to separate metals from impurities, then know what metal it is, then use suitably other metals in the right proportion and prepare ornaments. So I'm going to show you on screen. So this has the English word and the Tamil word as well. So I will read the Tamil word and the English word for you. So what you see below, in this, so let's have let's read it from top to bottom. So you're going to go to the second row. So so the first one that you find as a huge egg-like structure with a dropping below and with a holder at the top. It's quite huge. The second column figure at the top. It's a tongattan, which is a pendant, and below that is a needle. It's an usi. In Tamil, we call it usi. And on the right-hand side, from your side, I'm going to take you to the third column. So we have got a mani, which is a bead. It's broken. Then below that, there is a complete mani, which has got a hole, a perforation. Probably it was used for stringing. And that's a mani, which is a bead. And then below that is again a plate, a tagadu. It's a plate. Now let's go to the first column. So the first column has a pottan, which is a button. So buttons were used for dresses those days made of gold. So what I'm showing you is gold. Then valayam, which is a ring. So this is not completely a ring. Partially we have found it's a ring. So these are the Kiradi findings. So this adds a lot of value to our understanding of how ancient sites worked in those days.